Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we get to look at two famous parables that Jesus taught in the book of Mark. Mark chapter 4 verses 26 to 34 takes a bit of a gardening theme and uses the analogies of seeds to show what the kingdom of God is like. And for some of you, I bet the analogy of seeds might actually be very appropriate as you've been working away in your gardens now that the weather's warming up and it's spring and you've been planting away. We're going to do a deep dive into these parables today. But first, I actually want us to go to the very end of our passages in verses 33 and 34 and use this as the context for today. Mark writes in verse 33 that Jesus used parables all the time. In fact, it's written that he didn't say anything to the crowds without using a parable. And if you read throughout the Gospels, you actually can see this as a reality when Jesus is speaking to large crowds. He uses these parables as a way to communicate really big picture ideas with large groups of people. Jesus takes very large, complicated subject matters and he breaks them down in a way that is accessible, that's relatable, and easy to be understood no matter what your education level is. He makes his teachings available for all to hear and for all to understand. He uses incredible imagery and symbolism to describe sometimes really complicated theological matters. He uses it to be understood, and that is such an amazing lesson for us today. Some of the parables that we read throughout the Gospels can really be quite complicated, but Jesus knew his crowd, and he knew how to engage them and offer them these concepts in a way that everyone could understand them. The first parable that we read in our passage in Mark describes the parable of the growing seed. It talks about how the kingdom of God is going to grow no matter what. Whether we are a part of this picture or not, God's message is going to move throughout the world, and it's going to continue to grow. However, Jesus uses the illustration of seeds that grow. He knew his audience, and he knew that a farming and gardening concept was actually going to be really easy to understand for the people that he was talking to. So he describes it through the seed analogy. And he says that once seeds are scattered, they will grow. Whether or not they're being very attentive or the farmer's being attentive to them, they're still going to grow until it is ripe and ready to be harvested. And then the farmer will attend to it and harvest it properly. Let's talk about the power this parable has. If you've spent a while in the church, you may have heard this before, that planting seeds has power. And I know that this concept can sometimes feel like the most defeating concept ever, because it doesn't seem that once the seeds are planted that they're actually doing anything. There is a growing period after seeds are planted, and different seeds have different germinating times until there's a sign of a seedling. And for some seeds, this happens very quickly, and for others, it's a very long process. And this is the same when we start to share the gospel with the people in our circles. Sometimes we can see that the seed is growing in people right away. When we share Jesus with them, it happens almost instantly. And other times it feels like it's ignored and the seed has immediately died and will never actually turn into a seedling. But whether or not we are present and tending those seeds, we never know what God is doing in the background. We do not know how he is tending those seeds and allowing them to grow. And sometimes our role is merely just to plant seed and then to have someone else be the person to tend it and help turn it into a seedling. This can be frustrating, and it can also be beautiful. That is why it is so important for us to have strong relationships built with others. We need to have these relationships so that we can be there with people as their seeds are starting to grow. It's such a beautiful gift that the Lord has given us, to walk with people, to plant those seeds, and to be there to see how those seeds are going to grow. But Jesus doesn't just stop there with his seed analogies. He then goes on in verse 30 and talks about the kingdom of God, the most expansive, beautiful thing. And then he compares it to the smallest of seeds, the mustard seed. This could sound defeating if you were listening to it in real time. I bet people that were there were thinking that, Jesus starts to talk about the kingdom of God, what it's like, how amazing. And the last thing that they are thinking he would ever compare it to is a small mustard seed. But he doesn't just stop there. He says that the kingdom of God is like a mustard seed, that when it is planted, it grows into one of the largest garden plants. It actually turns into something that animals can make their home in. The kingdom of God doesn't just stay small, but it continues to grow into something bigger than we can ever know. And I think it's easy for us to count people out before we ever even give them a chance. It's easy to say, I shared the gospel once and it didn't go amazing, so obviously God's just not for them. I won't count on them finding Jesus. It's easy to do so because so often we don't see a result right away. But God is trying to say that we don't have to see it right away because he's going to use that seed that we plant and help it grow. Think of your circles. What does it mean to start planting seeds? And what do seeds even look like? The most obvious seed is when we directly share the gospel with someone in our circle. But seeds also look like how we live our everyday lives like Jesus. Seeds can be showing others how we react to stressful situations, or how we talk about others in not a gossipy or negative way, but how we encourage or we uplift other people in our life. It's how those in relationships show hard work and perseverance within their relationship because they are drawing on their strength from the Lord. It's how we react when we win or lose in sports, when we're humble and kind. Demonstrating the fruits of the Spirit to those in our circle can be little seeds that are planted that God can use to have them discover who God is and accept the grace that he has given them. So I want us to do this. I want us to start to think about the circle in our lives. Maybe you've been planting seeds for a while and you're in a waiting period. Start to ask God about that waiting period and tell him your frustrations. But also ask God if there's anything else to do in that waiting period. If you don't feel like you've had opportunities, then maybe it's time for us to ask God how we can demonstrate the love and grace that we've received from God to those in our circles. You never know what God is going to use to grow or to draw people closer to him. Don't just give up because one seed didn't work. You never know what God is going to do, how he is going to take that seed and how he is going to grow it into something bigger than we can ever ask for or imagine. Have a great week.